All right, thank you for staying with us here watching Daybreak on Trust TV. And now it's time for us to take a look at the dailies on Daybreak. We'll begin with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, where you have the lead story that has a kicker: amid shrinking reserves, concerns mount over Tinubu's directives on grains. The rider says strategic reserves dropped to 150,000 tons, according to sources. 24.8 million Nigerians risk acute hunger, the WFP FAO report says. You also have CBN releases grains, says distribution begins today. 5,000 trucks needed. That is for the distribution. You have the pictorial there, traders at Karmo Market in Abuja. Sanwo-Olu approves 61 million naira for burial of 103 #NSAS victims on page 7. And then you also have Davido under fire over offensive video against Islam on page 18. Kano loses 2 ex-commissioners in 3 days on page 18 as well. And also Ogun students beat teacher who stopped exam malpractice on page 20. Now, let's take a look at the editorial of the Daily Trust newspaper, where it's captioned "Reverse Chaotic Subsidy Policy." You'd find all the details of that on page 17.
Now let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. It has a lead story that says workers kick as governors borrow 2.2 trillion naira from banks. And the first rider, governor's borrowing spree has left states poorer. Pensioners, workers lament. We also have another rider that says government must avoid short-term borrowing that may harm state finances. Dons 1. And above the masthead, we have Senate gears up for ministerial screening, awaits list this week. Dollar now 876 as forex shortage worsens. We also have Ganduje intensifies lobby as North Central APC demands chairmanship slot. And beneath the pictorial, we have NSAS, 103 recovered bodies, not Lekki tollgate victims, says Lagos government. We also have NDLEA seizes 3.7 billion naira tramadol at the Lagos airport. Still on the Punch, Ogun begins probe as 8 die after alcohol bout. These are the major stories on the Punch newspaper for today.
All right. Now, on the Nation newspaper, you have the lead story that says APC NEC to ratify Ganduje Basiru as chairman, secretary. Party's caucus endorses choices. Why Adamu Omisore had to go by Lukman. Now, you have above the masthead, #NSAS, nobody taken from tollgate, says Lagos government. You also have Nigerian equities outperform global stocks with 1.3 trillion naira gain. Also, Shetima in Rome for Global Food Security Summit, and also IMF forecast weak growth, inflation surge next year. Other stories: Court of Appeal, e-transmission of results not mandatory. You also have markets await monetary direction from CBN and MPC. These are the main stories on the Nation newspaper.
Now let's take a look at Business Day. It has a lead story that says Nigeria's new infrastructure fund faces legal hurdle. And we have what analysts expect from first MPC meeting after Emefiele's ouster. NHIA Act, Lagos Health Insurers lock hands over premium. And this is as Lagos government moves to outsource Ilera Eco to HMOs. And above that, we have Guyana's $1.4 billion oil savings. Avoid Nigeria's folly. These are the major stories on Business Day for today.
All right. Well, that's that for the papers. Now let's get some more perspectives. We have Salami Salman, a veteran journalist and MD Justice Pen Alliance, with us in the studio to give perspectives. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak, as always.
Eva, my friend.
You're welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Stella.
Good morning.
Let me first thank God and congratulate Daily Trust over the appointment of Ismaila Mudashiru as the special advisor media and publicity to the deputy Senate president. It shows one thing, that daily trust, and indeed the media trust, is a stickler for professionalism.
Indeed. Well, indeed,
Yeah.
we are very excited and happy for Ismail as well. Now, let's start with the editorial of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. It talks about the need to reverse the, what they say, chaotic subsidy policy. Do you think that the policy has actually gone, chaotic, and there's actually that need to reverse that?
Let me, quote and unquote, educate Daily Trust on the need to be very, very circumspect in their choice of words, especially casting headlines. Chaotic is strong, very strong. And secondly, it is too early in the day to make a very meaningful, robust, and seminal assessment of the policy. But be it as it may, I think that giving birth, the process of childbirth is always painful.
And in some cases in childbirth, we see women dying in the process due to sometimes lack of care and diligence in how sensitive that process is. And that's what I believe that the paper is talking about the need to have infrastructure in place. We discussed this earlier on with some stakeholders in the transport system, and they actually bear their minds on the need to consider putting in place certain things that many Nigerians have actually talked about. I think there's a near consensus by many Nigerians that yes, the subsidy has to go. However, the way and manner it is being done, it's more like putting the cart before the horse in this instance, because certain infrastructural needs that need to be put in place, for instance, for CNG conversion, is not there. And if you look at the economy as it is now, it's almost at a standstill. You have people, not going to work. So what do we say about productivity in the coming months, in Nigeria? You have people alternating, say, okay, we are not going to work for regular 5 days, we'll be working for 2 days or 3 days and all that. That affects productivity. So to that extent, if you think about the impact that this is having on the economy, on the lives of Nigerians generally, don't you think that the editorial is spot on?
I still maintain my stand that, as agreed, thank God you two have said, you have told us here in your own words that there is a consensus on the need to remove the subsidy because it is no more sustainable. Imagine spending 4.4 trillion on subsidy alone. And on a very serious note, I think that President Bola Tinubu's government should not make the same mistake the former President Buhari's government made. What was the mistake? There is the need to inform Nigerians on what is being done, why it's being done, how it's being done, and what will be the consequences of the policies. I think that there is the need for the petroleum subsidy to go.
All right, Mr. Salami, before you go further, this editorial further talks on something, and that is the fact that before now the argument has been that it's the elite that benefits from petrol subsidy, and that has even the IMF and the World Bank, they kept on drumming pushing that down our throats that okay, it was the elite. But the past 2 months have shown, and I'm sure you would agree, that it's not really the elite. In fact, the past 2 months have shown how deeply entrenched the fuel subsidy policy is in the country. It's almost like it's the basis upon which we do every other thing. If you look at the impact it has had so far, At the moment, like Ayuba said earlier, is a situation where you drive through the streets and then there are no cars, and it's almost like a lockdown situation.
Well, let us be very, very careful about the way we go about this. Why? Because whether we like it or not, are we really subsidizing? Yes, your argument has been that there is pain, there is anguish, there is suffering in the land. I agree there is. But the fact still remains that the bulk of the so-called subsidy money did not go to the real people, the poor masses.
So is the subsidy now the problem? If this is what you are saying, then it appears that the subsidy in itself is not the problem, but implementation, the actors implementing the subsidy, happens to be the problem. So why don't we address those who are responsible for implementing, rather than, just allow Nigerians to go through this?
Well, I will be very, very careful in defending the government now, because I think what the government intends to do is to really pump the so-called money that is going to the wrong hand into social infrastructure, which perhaps they should have done before even removing the subsidy. But then, how long will it take?
Mr. Salami, the word on the street these days is that Nigerians can no longer breathe. I don't know if you've seen it or heard it anywhere. Now, if they want to pump this money saved into social infrastructure, and the people are suffering as much as they are. Okay, now we hear that there's going to be a lot of the money that will be shared to states this month is going to be higher than they have maybe even ever received. And we do know what happens at the state level. So do you really believe that Nigerians are going to be better off for this?
I have no doubt in my mind that at the end of the day, we'll see light at the end of the tunnel. But the fact still remains that the money that has been saved from the subsidy removal is phenomenal. Look at what the states went home with last month. It was almost 4 times the amount the money they normally collect as FAC, federal allocation. The point now is this: I want Nigerians to hold their chief executives, hold them, ask questions, hold them accountable. What are you doing with this money? We realize that, for example, look at the money realized from this 13% derivation by these oil producing states, 70.3 billion. And Delta State went home with 26.6 billion, followed by Rivers and Akwa Ibom. The point is this:
the situation in the Niger Delta is, we do know the situation there. The people are suffering despite the fact that they've been receiving this derivation long before now. So the only difference now is that this time around it's higher. So does it mean that it's going to impact positively in their lives?
There is no guarantee. There is no guarantee. Why is there no guarantee? No guarantee because sovereignty belongs to the people. You elected these people. You still need to ask questions. The money is not their money. If a governor is building a school, it's not doing you a favor. If a governor is building roads and bridges, it's not doing a favor. If he's providing health services, thank God for he's doing his job. But the point is this: there is the need for Nigerians to be alive and be kicking. They must hold public office holders accountable.
Yes.
Public office is public trust.
Yes. While this is a continuous thing, this is not something that has a date to end. Nigerians will have to continue to hold public office holders accountable. But in the short term, we are talking about a policy that is having a devastating impact on the economy and on the daily lives of Nigerians. How do you explain people spending virtually their entire pay in a month, maybe their salary, on transporting themselves to office? How do they live? How do they survive? So that's what we are talking about. Why can't we focus on things that will help cushion the impact before we even take out the subsidy? before we decide to go this route, and which is what this editorial is saying.
Well, we will still need to hold government accountable, and I still believe that there is the need for the federal government to engage on policies that has what I call milk of human kindness. Why is government there? Government, I believe, is there to cushion the painful effects of the challenges of existentialism. And I still want to believe that no matter how good, no matter how thoughtful, and no matter how cost-saving a policy is, at the end of the day, we should know that the citizens are the receiving end. Let us lessen their yoke.
Mr. Salami, we haven't seen any sign of cutting cost of governance by the governors, or even at the federal level. We haven't seen anything like that. So that is why a lot of Nigerians are worried that we haven't seen this cutting down of the cost of governance, yet they have just gone home with a lot of money this time. What are we going to see?
Well, you see, I still want to believe that this is still a learning process, a continuous one, and I still want to believe that Nigerians are too docile. We are too docile. They can't be asking Nigerians to fasten their belt while they are loosening theirs. And I still want to believe that there is the need to know that governance is just not, it's not an easy way of making money. It is just service. If you know that you are not interested in rendering selfless service to the people, you have no business being government. Right. And I still want to believe that it is high time our people woke up from their slumber. We can't continue like this. We must hold government accountable to the people.
Okay. All right. Well, that seemed like a good place to end the conversation, holding government to account. But let's look at other stories as well. On page 20, we have a story of some students in Ogun State where we read they beat their teacher who stopped them from exam malpractice. And we've seen this kind of stories time and again in our papers, and that goes to touch on the issue of the moral decadence in our country, as a society. What do you make of this story?
Oh my God, I feel so sad. I keep on telling whoever cares to listen that the moral crisis in Nigeria today is legendary. It is sadder the more to know that this thing happened in Ogun State. Why did I say so? Ogun State, arguably, is one of the most sophisticated states in Nigeria that parades a lot of enlightened people. It is sad that it has gotten to a level where students will now take or extract a pound of flesh on their teacher simply because he feels that cheating should not be allowed. Honestly, we should do something.
Actually, I mean, this particular story was on the City and Crime page of the Daily Trust. And I do remember that in 2021, at least we reported on the same page, City and Crime, at least 4 incidents where teachers were assaulted. And do you think that maybe because that happened and we didn't hear of what happened to the students, maybe that is why we're still having cases like that?
Well, it is known in Nigeria that most times, because there's no consequence. If there is no consequence, it will happen and happen again. Come to Minnesota, this Jamba lady. Mesoma. Come to the case of that lady. Quite some people are even still saying that no, don't punish her. Please allow her. What the hell are we talking about? You mean we should reward immorality? It has gotten to a level where Nigerians cannot say, no, this is not acceptable. kudos to what happened when Femi Kuti, Seun Kuti slapped a policeman. In unison, people rose and said, no, this is unacceptable. What happened in Ogun State is not acceptable. Nigerian Union of Teachers should rise up against it. NUC should rise up against it. And indeed, all stakeholders, Parents and Teachers Association of schools should rise up against this. This should not allow to be. Honestly, there is need for an end to this. It is not acceptable.
Okay, quickly before we round up, I would like to get your thoughts on the story that has been trending throughout yesterday on social media, talking about the hashtag EndSARS protest. There was a leaked memo to the effect that 103 victims are to be buried, and that the governor has approved the sum of 61 million naira for that purpose. There's been this controversy that has been lingering. What do you make of it?
Is getting clearer. When it is clear and when it is confirmed that so number truly died, and truly that the government has approved so amount of millions for the burial, then I think we are getting somewhere.
The state government
has
didn't deny,
the story.
61 million for the burial.
Yes, they didn't deny the story.
At the end of the day, people indeed did die.
Yes, the argument is now whether they died at Lekki Toll Gate or they died in various places, which is what the state government is saying. The government said they died in different locations in Lagos, but not necessarily at the Lekki Toll Gate. So that's where the argument is. Those who are accusing government for the killings at the Lekki Toll Gate are saying that, you know, some of the victims from the Lekki Toll Gate were taken away from that place, and that it's possible they died in different places, but that some of the victims that were shot were taken away by the soldiers, according to those who are making the allegations. So, I mean, when you listen to this, you know, it further widens the trust deficit, isn't it?
The hen has come home to roost at the end of the day. If that number of people died, it does not really matter whether they died at toll gate, Lekki Toll Gate. The fact remains that we lost that number of souls as a result of that EndSARS agitation. Then there are more questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Salami Salmon, veteran journalist and also the MD Justice Pen Alliance. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak this morning and sharing your perspectives. Unfortunately, we have to end at this point.
Aiba, thank you very much. And Stella, my sister, thank you very much.
Thank you.